Okay, so the other thing that I want to talk about before we get into the details of Gilda is the idea of charisma. Charisma is extremely important to Hollywood movies and how they work and what they do. But it's like the word cool. It's extremely hard to define. It's one of those things that you know it when you see it, but it's very hard. If someone asks you to define what's cool, you can give them examples of cool things. You can say, this movie is cool, this person is cool, this outfit is cool, this place is cool. But if somebody says define it, very, 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 very difficult to define. Um, the closest you can get with cool, for example, is part of being cool is not caring what other people think, and just doing your own thing, and going your own way and setting your own style, right? Because if you're copying other people, that's not cool, right? So then cool has to do with sort of making your own way and doing your own thing. But the problem, of course, is you can think of lots of people who have a unique style that's terrible, or who go their own way and do their own thing and they suck. So it's a very so that means that doing your own thing and making your own style and being bold uh, is part of cool, but it's not all of it. So it's a very, very hard thing to put into words. Charisma is the same thing. Um, One of the tricky things that makes charisma hard to define is that there is a huge overlap, although it's not 100%, but there's a very large overlap between, like, you just picture a big circle here that's like very extremely good looking people. And then here's charisma. And it overlaps a lot, but I can't put two hands up because I have to use my hand is holding the camera. But the point is that there's a circle here that's charisma, and there's a circle here that's good looking. They overlap so much, that it's tempting to think that just good looking people have charisma. Just anybody handsome has charisma. And charisma is a kind of like, it's like a magnetic attraction where you're just fascinated by someone that you just love to. If there's an actor and you'll just watch him in anything, that person has charisma. That's a big part of it. What's tricky is that in Hollywood movies, they tend to get extremely good looking people, um, but not all of those good looking people have charisma. The best, what you really need is people who are both good looking and have charisma, and that's how you get yourself a blockbuster movie star, like Chris Helmsworth in Thor or something. He has both charisma and is very good looking. Um, whereas it's tricky to define. So for and you can look up some of these actors, but if you look up like Chris Evans, I think has a pretty good amount of charisma as Captain America. He's also very good looking. There's another actor named Chris Pine. Chris Pine is very good looking, but he doesn't have charisma. But it's hard to explain why. They're both very handsome men with like good jaw lines, and I mean they're very good looking people. But just Chris Pine, I don't know how to explain it. Chris Pine's not a movie star. They keep putting him in movies and trying to make him a movie star because he's so good looking. You'd think that he'd be a great movie star, but there's just something doesn't work. He's very good looking, but that's not it. Um, there are also people who are um, not good looking but have a lot of charisma. Steve Buscemi would be my example of this. Steve Buscemi is not, and if you know who that is, he's in Boardwalk. He's the lead in Boardwalk Empire, and he's in Coen Brothers movies. He's a fun actor. I will watch Steve Buscemi in anything. I think he's great. He's fascinating. He's not like a traditionally good-looking, handsome dude, but he's just interesting to watch. I can just watch him all the time. So he has charisma without being absurdly good-looking. Chris Pine is good-looking but doesn't have charisma. Gilda is both beautiful, and Rita Hayworth, I should say, is both beautiful and has charisma. So it's a hard thing to analyze, but it's an important thing to pay attention to because movies are designed to kind of hypnotize the audience. A lot of movies are designed to hypnotize the audience into happiness. These kind of blissful, happy things where you just want to watch these people and you want to watch them be in any. Oh, they're in another movie. Oh, I'm going to buy that too. Um, so it can be hard to define, but it is a crucial way that Hollywood and movies function, is to pay attention to charisma, and it's a weird, odd, strange thing, and it's so similar to just being good looking that it's easy to miss. When I say something's hard to analyze, by the way, when you talk about analysis, usually you're talking about breaking things down into smaller parts, right? So if you have a building, it's made out of bricks. Those are smaller parts. You can take the bricks and you can, they're made out of atoms or something or whatever. You can keep breaking it down into smaller and smaller bits. But charisma is a tough thing to break into bits. It's hard to understand what the pieces are separately that create charisma, but it's a kind of it's mesmerizing. Jeff Goldblum, Christopher Walken is not a traditionally good-looking guy, but he's a very charismatic guy. Jeff Goldblum is both good-looking and he has a lot of charisma, and he's similar in some ways to Christopher Walken in the way that he delivers words with a strange emphasis. He has an odd way of talking that makes me just want to listen to him all the time. Okay, cool. So that's really like the key. If you really want to think about charisma, and it's about acting. When we talk about charisma, we're talking about acting. We're talking about actors. Why did you put this person in the role? And what are they doing to create this sense of charisma and sort of being mesmerizing? Rita Hayworth in Gilda is the most famous example of a beautiful person with a huge amount of charisma, and the whole movie is built around her and that charisma. It's just a vehicle for her charisma. And so it's to study this movie is to study something that is fundamental to how movies work. Okay, so let's start getting into it. I don't have a ton to say about some of the more technical details on this movie. I'm much more interested in kind of larger sort of thematic issues. So I think we'll probably just kind of jump into them and start talking about it. Um, so to start with, let's talk about the two guys, Johnny and Balin. Um, we established these two guys, right? Johnny is just like a low life gambler. He's introduced like rolling dice at the beginning of the movie, just winning money from these regular guys. He's about to get beat up, and then Balin saves us because he's cheating, and then Balin saves his life. And Balin, it turns out, runs a whole illegal casino. Um, One of the first things you want to notice about these two characters is that they're both crooks. They just have different sizes that they work on. So one is a small crook who wins a couple of bucks here and there by cheating and gambling, and then Balin is really just a gigantic version of Johnny. He's a criminal just like Johnny is. He runs all, instead of just having a pair of crooked dice, he has an entire casino where he's doing sneaky shit. They're essentially the same person. It's just like Balin is just basically a supersized Johnny. They're in the same profession. Um, this movie has a lot of let's see, I'm gonna keep going here actually. Um, yeah, okay. This movie puts a lot of themes sort of on display. Um, I'm kind of hopping around here, but they're set up they're set up in these kinds of opening moments where, first of all, they have this idea of Balin's weapon. He calls his little friend, and there's multiple. They go back to this weapon again, the weapon being the little sword thing, and the cane. The cane has a blade that pops out of it, and he calls this is his little friend. Um, the cane sword thing comes back again and again because earlier in the movie he talks about, oh, it's just the three of us, Balin, Johnny, and Balin's weapon. This is my little friend. Um, by the way, you'll see that same thing used in Scarface, famously. In Scarface, he says, "Say hello to my little friend," and then he machine guns everybody at the end of the Brian De Palma's Scarface. Um, but he talks about the weapon like it's a person. This is important because Balin uses people, and so for him, Johnny is just another weapon. He's just another tool. He's just something to Balin owns people and he controls them, and so from Balin's perspective, there is no difference between the weapon that he owns and the people that he deals with. They're all tools for him to use, right? And he's this kind of maniac that has like a giant picture of himself on the wall, and so he's kind of the classic sort of evil supervillain guy who can't tell the difference between a human being and a weapon because they're both things that you use. They're both things that you can buy with money, and so they're all the same. Um, but it sets up a relationship because there's a structure created. Oh, it's just the three of us: Balin, Johnny, and the weapon. But what's going to happen is as the movie progresses, just the three of us is going to change into Balin and Johnny and Gilda, which means Gilda's taken the place of the weapon. And at one point, Balin says to Johnny, because she says, "Oh, because they do a toast to the three of us, Balin, Gilda, and Johnny," and he says, "Oh, we were just recently toasting to three people." And Gilda says, "Well, was it a man or a woman?" And Balin says, "What do you think, Johnny?" Johnny says that Gilda doesn't know what they're talking about, but Johnny says it's a woman. Um, that the weapon is a woman because it looks like one thing, but it's actually something else. So these, and this is again, so the weapon is used as a commentary on women. Um, so it sets up this thing that all this talk about Balin and the Cane and Johnny becomes Balin and Gilda and Johnny. And that sets up a structure that will follow us through the rest of the movie. And of course, that weapon will come into play at the very end of the movie. All right, I'll see you in the next video.